it's Mundo Monday. Do you remember when we talked about the stars and how people all over the world see the stars and tell stories about them? Well, in the daytime, the sky is still there, all around the world, connecting us all. And there are plenty more stories about the sky in the daytime, too. Our first story is from the Bini people in Nigeria, in Western Africa. It is called
Why the Sky is Far Away, a folktale from Nigeria, retold by Mary-Joan Gerson and illustrated by Hope Merriman. In the beginning, the sky was very close to the earth. In that time, men did not have to sow crops and harvest them, and women did not have to prepare soup, cook rice. Anyone who was hungry just cut a piece of sky off and ate it. It was delicious, too. Sometimes the sky tasted like meat stew, sometimes like roasted corn, sometimes like ripe pineapple. There was very little work to do, so people spent their time weaving beautiful cloth, or carving handsome statues, or retelling tales of adventure. The king of the land was called the Oba, and his court was magnificent. At the royal court, there was a team of servants whose only work was to cut and shape the sky for ordinary meals and for special ceremonies. Kind of like doing origami with the sky. But the sky was growing angry because people were wasteful. Most often they cut off more than they could possibly eat, and then they threw the leftovers in the garbage heap. I am tired of seeing myself soured and spoiled on every garbage heap in the land, booted the sky. One morning, at sunrise, the sky turned very dark. Thick black clouds gathered all over the Oba's palace, and a great voice boomed out from above. Oba, mighty one, your people have wasted my gift. I am tired of seeing myself in heaps of garbage everywhere. I warn you, do not waste my gift any longer, or it will no longer be yours. The Oba, in terror, sent messengers carrying the sky's warning to every corner of the land. People were very careful after that, until the time arrived for the greatest festival of the year, the festival that celebrated the power of the Oba himself. The most important palace dancers performed all through the night, and the Oba himself in ceremonial robes danced for his subjects. By the 5th day, there was rejoicing in every home and on every street. However, no one cut off more sky than they absolutely needed to feed the guests. There was a danger that, in the gaiety of the celebration, people would forget to be careful. Now, there was a woman in this kingdom who was never satisfied. She could barely move when she wore all the weighty coral necklaces her husband had bought her. But she craved more necklaces. She had 11 children all her own. But she felt her house was empty. And most of all, Adise loved to eat. On the 7th day of the celebration, Adise and her husband were invited to the Oba's palace, where they danced and ate past midnight. What an evening it was, she thought later, standing in her own garden again. How I wish I could relive tonight. The drumming I heard, the riches I saw, the food I ate. She looked up at the sky and, as if to recapture her earlier pleasure, cut off a huge piece to eat. She had only finished 1/3 of it when she could swallow no more. What have I done? Wailed Adise. I cannot throw this away. Atolo! She screamed, calling her husband. Come and finish this piece of sky for me. Her husband, exhausted from dancing all night and stuffed with the sky he'd eaten at the Oba's palace already, could only take 2 bites. Wake the children! Screamed Adise. Now the children had enjoyed a masquerade and a party after dinner, and most of them were still too full to even nibble at their mother's piece of sky. The neighbors were all called. and the neighbors' neighbors were called, but Adisi still held in her hand a big chunk of sky. "What does it matter?" she said. "One more piece in the rubbish heap," and she threw the leftover in the garbage bin at the back of her house. The ground shook with thunder. Lightning creased the sky above the Oba's palace, but no rain fell. "Oba, mighty one," boomed a voice from above, "your people have not treated me with respect. Now I will leave you and move far away. You must learn how to plow the land and gather crops and hunt in the forests. Perhaps through your own labor you will learn not to waste the gifts of nature." No one slept very well that night. The rising sun uncovered the heads of men and women and children peering over rooftops and through windows, straining to see if the sky had really left them. And it truly had. It had sailed upward, far out of their reach. From that day onward, men had to grow their own food. They tilled the land and planted crops and harvested them, and far above them rested the sky, distant and blue. The end.
And that is why you cannot eat the sky. But the sky does still feed everyone. There are two things the sky gives us that we need to grow our food. Do you know what they are? The sun and the rain. It's funny that usually if the sun is out, there is no rain, and if it is raining, we can't see the sun. We need both. If one has been missing for a while, people have wondered what they can do to bring it back. And so they've told stories like this one, from Slovenia, back up north here in Europe. Even though the people in this book aren't people, they're animals.
How the sun was brought back to the sky. This is a Slovenian folktale by Mirra Ginsburg. Pictures by Jose Aguelo and Ariane Dewey. They drew the pictures in one of our earlier books, too. One day, gray clouds, huge as mountains, covered the sky. They stayed on and on and on, and the sun did not come out for 3 whole days. The chicks got worried. It was cold and sad without sunshine. "Where could the sun have gone?" they cried. "We'll go and bring it back to the sky." "How will you find it?" clucked the mother hen. "Do you know where it lives?" "Oh, we don't know where it lives," the chick said, "but we shall ask the way of anyone we meet." The mother hen prepared the chicks for the long journey. She gave each one a grain of rye and a poppy seed. The chicks set out. They walked and walked until they reached a vegetable patch. In the middle of it was a huge head of cabbage, and on the bottom leaf sat a snail. He was large with big horns, and he carried his house on his back. "Snail, snail," the chicks asked, "can you tell us where the sun lives?" "I don't know," asked the snail. "Ask the magpie over the fence. She might tell you." Well, the busy magpie did not even wait for the chicks to come to her. She flew down to them, chattering, clattering with her beak. "Chicks, chicks, where are you going? Where are you going, chicks, chicks?" The sun has not come out for 3 days. We're going to look for it." "I'll come with you. I'll come with you." "Do you know where the sun lives?" "I don't, but Rabbit may know. His home is in the furrow, right behind the cabbage patch," the magpie said. "I'll take you there." The rabbit saw that guests were coming. He wiped his whiskers with his paw and opened his gate as wide as it would go. "Rabbit, Rabbit," the chips peeped, the magpie chattered. "We are looking for the sun. Do you know where it lives?" "Well, I don't, but my neighbor the duck may know. Her home is in the reeds by the brook." The rabbit led them to the brook. The duck's house stood right by the water, and a boat was tied up nearby. "Are you home, neighbor?" cried the rabbit. I'm home, home, quacked the duck. Sun's been gone for 3 days now. I can't dry out. Well, we're looking for the sun, cried the chicks, the magpie, and the rabbit. Do you know where it lives? I don't, but there's a tree across the brook. The hedgehog's home is in the hollow among the roots. He's sure to know. He knows everything. They got into the boat and crossed the brook. The hedgehog lay rolled up, dozing under a tree. Hedgehog, hedgehog, cried the chicks, the magpie, the rabbit, and the duck. Do you know where the sun lives? It hasn't been out in the sky for 3 days. Maybe it is sick. The hedgehog thought a while and said, Well, of course, I know where it lives. Behind my tree, there is a mountain. On top of the mountain, there's a cloud. Over the cloud lives a silver moon, and from the moon to the sun, it's only a short walk. The hedgehog took a stick and walked ahead to show everybody else the way. They climbed to the top of the mountain, where the cloud was resting. The chicks, the magpie, the rabbit, the duck, and the hedgehog got up on top of the cloud. They sat down comfortably to make sure they wouldn't fall off, and the cloud flew with them straight to the moon's house. The moon saw them coming and quickly lit its silver horns. Moon, moon, cried the chicks, the magpie, the rabbit, the duck, and the hedgehog. Show us where the sun lives. It hasn't come out for 3 days, and everything is sad and cold without it. The moon brought them directly to the sun's house. The windows were dark. There was no light anywhere. The sun, they thought, must be asleep and didn't want to wake. The magpie chattered loudly. The chicks peeped, the duck quacked, the rabbit flapped his ears, and the hedgehog banged his stick on the door. Sun, sun, world's delight, come out, give us warmth and light. Who is that shouting under my window? Grumbled the sun. Who isn't letting me sleep? Your friends, the chicks, the magpie, the rabbit, the duck, and the hedgehog. We've come to wake you. It's time to get up. Oh, groaned the sun. How can I show myself now? For 3 long days, gray clouds shut me out of the sky. I don't even know how to shine anymore. The rabbit heard this, and he ran down to the well and brought a pail of water. The duck began to wash the sun. The magpie dried it with a towel. The hedgehog polished it with his bristles, and the chicks picked every speck of dust off its face. And after that, the sun shined. The sun looked out over the sky, clean, fresh, and golden, spreading light and warmth everywhere, and all the animals slid down its rays back to their homes. The mother hen came out into the sunshine. Cluck, cluck, she called to her chicks. They gathered around her, running here and there, looking for crumbs and seeds, as bright and gay and golden as the sun itself. And if you don't believe my story, look out the window, and you'll see. The hen is there, the chicks are there, the sun is there. Doesn't that prove that every word of my story is true?
Did you notice this is a cumulative story? The chicks gather more friends as they go along. There are many stories like this around the world, with words that repeat and repeat as more and more words are added. Our last story is like this too, but the plot of this story is completely the other way around. The sun isn't hiding, but it just won't rain. We go back to Africa for our last story, but farther south than Nigeria, to Kenya, which is right on the equator. Do you remember how I told you the Arctic is cold because the sun doesn't hit it as directly as other places on the earth? The equator is the opposite. Bam! Lots of direct sunlight. The people and animals here really need the rain to keep from drying out. This story, told by the Nandi people, tells of one clever cowherd who finds a way to make it rain.
Bringing the Rain to Kapiti Plain by Verna Aardema. Pictures by Beatrice Vidal. A Nandi tale. This is the great Kapiti plain, all fresh and green from the African rains, a sea of grass for the ground birds to nest in, and patches of shade for wild creatures to rest in, with acacia trees for giraffes to browse on, and grass for the herdsmen to pasture their cows on. But one year the rains were so very belated that all of the big wild creatures migrated. Then Kapiti helped to end that terrible drought. And this story tells how it all came about. This is the cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. These are the cows, all hungry and dry, who mooed for the rain to come out of the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were hungry and dry, and mooed for the rain to fall out of the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is the eagle, who dropped a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to come out of the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is the arrow Kapiti put together, with a slender stick and an eagle feather, from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is the bow, so long and strong and strung with a string, a leather thong. A bow for the arrow Kapiti put together, with a slender stick and an eagle feather, from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall out of the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, that big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This was the shot that pierced the cloud and loosened the rain with a thunder loud. Bow so long and strong and strung with a string, a leather thong. A bow for the arrow Kapiti put together, with a slender stick and an eagle feather, from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead, the big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. So the grass grew green, and the cattle grew fat, and Kapiti got a wife, and a little Kapiti tends the cows now, and shoots down the rain when black clouds shadow Kapiti plain. The end.
Of course, what if the sun and the rain are both in the sky at the same time? And rainbows show up a lot in a whole bunch more worldwide stories, but those are for another day.